Blog Talk Radio. Hi, and welcome to The Art of Film Funding. I'm your co-host, Claire Papin, along with Carol Dean, author of the best-selling book, The Art of Film Funding. Carol is also the founder and president of From the Heart Productions and the host of this show. Today we are joined by our guest host, filmmaker Heather Lenz, best known for directing and producing the Sundance documentary Kusama Infinity. Our special guest today is Karla Murthy, an Emmy-nominated producer who has been working on news documentaries for over 15 years. She began her career working for the veteran journalist Bill Moyers and has been a producer, cinematographer, and correspondent for several news programs on PBS. Her award-winning work was described in the Columbia Journalism Review as compelling, informative, and compassionate. Her directorial debut, the feature documentary The Place That Makes Us, screened at numerous film festivals and had its national broadcast premiere on America ReFramed. She is now working on her next feature documentary called The Gas Station Attendant, a co-production with ITVS for public television. Karla is of Filipino and South Asian descent. She grew up in Texas, studying classical piano, and graduated from Oberlin College with a degree in religion and computer science. Today we'll discuss her recent short film, Love, Jamie, about a transgender artist incarcerated in Texas.
Thank you so much, Claire, for the introduction, and thank you, Karla, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Oh, you're welcome. We love your film. So for our listeners who haven't yet seen Love, Jamie, can you please tell us what it's about in your own words?
Sure. So Love, Jamie is about an artist named Jamie Diaz. And she's a trans woman, and she has been incarcerated in Texas for she's serving a life sentence. And when we met her, she was in her 27th year, and I think I said she's an artist. And so we're kind of profiling her relationship with someone that she met on the outside, and how the relationship grew over 10 years and eventually led to her first solo art show. So that's kind of the gist of the film.
Yeah, it's a really inspiring story. How did you originally hear about Jamie's story, and how did you begin the process of making the film?
So I was in between projects, and my longtime friend and colleague, actually we met working together for Bill Moyers many, many years ago. He was actually working on a different film and was at a gallery and talking to the gallery owner. And the owner, Daniel Cooney, had known of Jamie's work and had seen her work on a website and was just kind of talking about her and shared some of her work with my friend Andrew Fredericks, who then became the producer and the cinematographer of this film. And he shared her work with me, and I was just really blown away by the quality of her work and what she was able to produce under the circumstances she was in, and with the very, very limited art supplies that she had access to. And I thought, this could be a story, but I wasn't quite sure how much of a story it could be. I mean, I thought her artwork was amazing, but what else was there? And it wasn't until Daniel then shared a letter from Jamie that I thought, oh, this could be a film. Like once I heard her voice and saw her writing, and she was just so honest and vulnerable and also compassionate. And that's when sort of the idea of a short film emerged. And so that we reached out to Gabriel, who is the person who Jamie had formed this relationship with. And we talked to Gabriel about possibly doing a film, and then it just kind of went from there.
Yeah, it's amazing. And one thing that makes this film super interesting is that we get to know Jamie by hearing her voice and seeing her art, but she doesn't appear in any on-camera interviews. Can you please talk about whether that was an artistic choice or was that an obstacle that you had to overcome?
You know, it was kind of both, actually. So, you know, also the premise of the story is watching their relationship grow, and it started over letters, really by chance. I mean, Jamie had sent a letter to an organization that kind of advocates for people who are incarcerated, specifically for LGBTQ incarcerated individuals. And Gabriel was at a letter processing event and happened to open this one letter from Jamie that was beautifully illustrated and decided to write back. And so that was sort of how the relationship grew, was over these letters. So I knew we had that as sort of an element to work with. And, you know, I had filmed in many prisons before, in Texas actually. I've filmed, you know, for news, you know, on death row in Huntsville and a few other places. And so we were going down that route to get permission to film with her. I think at the time she was in Gatesville. But then as we started like looking into how I wanted the story to be crafted and what we wanted to know about Jamie, I just started to feel like the image of her sitting in prison, you know, it would be behind glass, it would be with guards around, it would be over a phone. I mean, it's really hard to get to know someone that way and to hear, you know, how they're honestly feeling about, you know, and to do interviews. And it wasn't very intimate at all. And that image of her in prison would be the image that people would have of her. It would be such a powerful image that would kind of consume any other thoughts you might have about her. And that's not how we wanted our audience to know her. And one of the amazing things, like we didn't know this when we first started filming with her, but Gabriel had started, they had wanted to do kind of an oral history and write down, you know, like a biography. And so every time they were calling Jamie, they started recording their calls. So all of a sudden we had this like, well, all of these, you know, hours and hours of phone calls that were very intimate between two dear friends. And so between that and her art, I think that was kind of how I wanted people to know her, is through her voice and through these very intimate conversations she was having with a friend, and through her artwork and through her letters. And so that was sort of how we came to that decision.
Well, it's so interesting that there were already many hours of recorded conversations, so that you were able to use. That's very interesting. So in addition to that material, did you also record other interviews with Jamie, either over the phone or in person?
We ended up not recording anything else with her. I mean, I spoke with her many times on the phone, and we had some video calls, but we ended up only using the phone calls with Jamie. And there was one moment where we were filming and they were speaking on the phone, and so we would, you know, film Gabriel talking with her on the phone. And so, yeah, the only like real narration, if you even want to call it that, is actually from Gabriel's interview that we did with them, and we use that as sort of voiceover throughout the film as well. And I think at the end of the day, it just made it much more intimate and personal. And you know, the challenge was, like with my first film, which was more of a cinema verite film, The Place That Makes Us, we were following people in Youngstown over 3 years. And all of the surprises come while you're filming. You know, like the heart of the film comes from like events that you often don't plan or you see, you know, while you're filming. And in this case, for this film, it was in the letters, and it was also in these phone recordings, and finding, you know, when her voice would crack, and you could hear, you know, she even talks about like, oh, I can hear you smiling over the phone. Like finding those moments that can only really be, I don't know, like when you hear it, you just know that that's a moment that that's emotional, and it was finding those to help tell the story in the film that became the beautiful little surprises that, made the film the heart of the film.
So, as you've mentioned, Jamie sends letters and artwork to Gabriel. Could you please talk a little bit about the process of getting to know Gabriel and how many times you filmed them during the making of the documentary?
Yeah, so, that was, it's an interesting relationship that Gabriel and Jamie have, and that, started as sort of like a pen pal and then became very much chosen family. And Gabriel calls, Jamie her aunt, and Jamie calls Gabriel her nephew, and at the same time, Gabriel's also very protective of Jamie because, when you're in prison, you have no rights. And so it was a little bit like getting to know Gabriel and getting their trust took some time. And also just because we had a track record, both Andrew and I, the work we've done, I think helped, put them at ease. And we also just had many conversations about and really listened to how Jamie wanted to be seen and heard, which is, not as someone who's incarcerated first, but as someone who is an artist and who's a trans woman first. So it was a lot of conversations like that. And also I don't know very many trans people. It was a lot of listening and understanding and reading, sort of, what it's like to be trans, how trans people want to be perceived, or, how just trying to avoid any of the pitfalls and the stereotypes that sometimes you can see in other, stories about trans people. So there was some of that, just education on my own part. And then, we filmed with Gabriel probably 3 times, and it is not easy to have a camera, put in your face if you've never done it before, and to then just talk about, your personal life. And so, we did a couple of days interview they were living in Somerville at the time, and then we went back, 2 more times after that, I think. But it all actually happened very quickly. I mean, we started filming, I believe, maybe it was in June 2022, and wrapped probably October of that same year. And then I started editing, and then we premiered the following year in a festival. So it was a very tight, kind of turnaround, which actually I liked compared to doing a feature over 3 years. And it was nice to work on something short for a change.
Yeah, well, it turned out, great. So what was it like to see the volume of amazing artwork that you included in the film, including the letters? There were so many, and they have beautiful artwork on them as well.
Yeah, they're pieces of art unto themselves, the letters. That, what's interesting is, Gabriel was sharing a lot of the art, in person, but then when we had it scanned and then I was blowing it up in the screen, then you could really see all these details that I had missed before. And that was really amazing to see. It was like a magnifying glass. And there was a treasure. I mean, Gabriel had taken upon themselves to kind of create this archive of her work. So there was a lot of it. And, I was just remembering watching it the first time. We premiered at the Directors Guild of America Theater in Los Angeles, and it's this huge theater, and to see her work blown up to that scale was breathtaking. And there's this one painting that she has, and every time it comes up, you hear the little ripple of gas in the audience. It's one of my favorite moments, being in an audience watching that film. And it's just because you're just so struck by what she was able to create with so little. And it's that contrast of knowing where she created, on the floor of a tiny cell, and then being in this big theater in this audience. I mean, it's a very kind of overwhelming experience. And you feel her absence. But yeah, to see her artwork at that scale was just amazing.
Yeah, I imagine it would be amazing to see it on a big screen, although it looks good on a small screen too. What was the most surprising thing you learned during the making of the film?
There's so many little things that you kind of learn along the way. With every film has its own, set of problems and obstacles that you have to overcome, big and small. Let me see. I think one thing was originally I thought maybe her work should be animated. This is sort of an expensive lesson I learned. I even went down the road, we raised some money to hire an animator, and they were amazing. But then at the end of the day, I realized that her art should just stand as it is, and it didn't need to be animated. So that was one thing that I learned along the way, is that it just to let the art be the art. What else? What was surprising? I think this film also, there are some projects that are really difficult, and you're just wrestling with them. And this one just really felt very easy. Everything fell into place, and that's usually not the case. And I was so thankful for that. And I was surprised that, by the outpouring of support, and, fundraising is always difficult. And we got a lot of, supporters to help us finish the film. And there were just so many pieces that kind of fell into place. And I think I was surprised at how that all came to be. And yeah, just by how much easier this film was than my last one. I'm sure there's other things that I'm not thinking about, but I think also just in the, just how Jamie's circle of support has grown, and how she was just able to touch so many people through her artwork, and the community that she's built. It's just, I've heard other people talk about chosen family is just very different from, your family. You don't, and it's a very, I just feel very lucky to have gotten to know her and Gabriel, and to now call them friends. I mean, when Jamie writes me now, we call each other sisters. And I think I was just surprised by that bond that can form, the bonds that you have with your friends, and just how amazing and supportive this community that she's been able to build around her while she's been in prison.
It's a really heartwarming story, so I'm glad to hear that you have this great bond with them. That's great. For our aspiring filmmakers who are listening, can you please talk about how you funded this film?
Yeah. So this is one of those stories where I just felt I have a stack of these ideas where, I'm very compelled to make something, and I just want to make it. And we had no funding or anything, to start, but I knew we needed to start filming for, just for timing. And so we just went and did it with our own resources. And then once we had I think we had 5 minutes, I cut that into something, and then we just started building a network of people and just sending them updates and clips. And then as we went and filmed more, I would add on another scene and say, here, look, this is what we made, and this is, how we're doing. And we sort of did this, our own kind of crowdfunding campaign in that way, and slowly built this network of people that didn't all give in the beginning, but eventually did, through a newsletter and just people that we knew. And we just kept building this database of people. I did get a grant also from the New York State Council of the Arts, which was incredibly helpful. And then I think also we got another grant from Vital Projects. I can't remember the exact fund, but that was such a coincidence. I just happened to be in an event with my husband, and I didn't know anyone there, and I just started talking to some random person standing next to me, about the film I was working on. And then he started telling me about his nephew who was transitioning. And we just struck up this conversation, and then I just included him on the newsletter. And eventually, down the road, he knew a grant maker and put me in touch with them. So it was all just kind of just by spreading the word and just doing it, and then hoping that funding would come, which it did, thankfully. But this was not like a money-making endeavor by any means. I mean, we definitely broke even, but I wasn't able to pay myself or my producer, but we paid everyone else who worked on the film with the money that we raised. So it was kind of just a piecemeal, just like if you build it, hopefully they will come, and they came, which was good. And we were lucky to have that support.
Yeah. I'm super impressed you were able to get any grant money in such a short turnaround, because, often these grants take so long to get that, with a short film like this that you made in such a speedy way, it's great you were able to get funding. And it's sad but typical that the people leading the project often don't get paid. So I'm sorry to hear that was the case. Could you talk a little bit about the process of getting the film onto PBS?
That was also just kind of a by chance sort of thing. I had applied to something else to get onto American Masters through a different route for a different kind of series that they were making. And we were rejected for that. But they still really liked the film, and it just happened to be that they were starting a new series of shorts. And it was like a timing thing. Like, it just worked out really well. And, a lot of these things are about, it's not necessarily your film that's bad or the quality. It's just, the films that they're trying to program, and they want like a variety of films. And I feel like we just sort of fit into the collection of films that they were programming for the inaugural season of this new shorts series that they were programming. It was one of those things where even though you get a no, you still kind of keep up these relationships. Every no is, an opportunity still, and they keep you in mind for things. So we were lucky in that way that it worked out that way, that this new series was happening to be launching at the same time. So that's how we ended up on American Masters.
Yeah, it's great, and that's how I saw the film, because I'm on their mailing list. So that's great. As your film has made its way into the world, what is the best part about sharing it with audiences?
I think, one of the things that I mentioned before was, seeing people's reaction to her art has been amazing. And to know that all of these people are hearing her story, even though she, is this one person sitting in prison, she's able to reach so many people now through our film. And, she was also granted parole just recently. Even though she was serving a life sentence, but at 30 years, she was up for parole and was granted parole. And the film allowed her to have a support network of people who have come out to help her with her reentry. And she had also suffered a stroke while she was in prison, and that has been just devastating for her because it affected the right side of her body, and her, she paints with her right side. And the number of people now who have come to support her and knew her through the film, taking her to doctor appointments or to go see artwork, now that she's out, I'm just so thankful that we made the film when we did, because it's who she was. And so when you meet her now, like even when she had her stroke, she was, it actually happened the day before Gabriel and I were scheduled to meet with her and have her first contact visit. Gabriel had never in their 10-year relationship ever given her a hug, and this is going to be our first opportunity. And she had this stroke and was in a hospital surrounded by guards and shackled to her bed and couldn't speak. And I was so thankful we were there to be her voice for her and to tell everyone around her, who this person is. And the film has allowed us to do that too, because she suffers from aphasia and she is starting to learn to paint with her left hand. But this film is a representation of everything that of who she was. So it's been really useful, I think, for Gabriel just to help build this support network for her. Reentry is already difficult, and then also, with a stroke on top of that. So it's been an incredible tool in a lot of ways, and it's kind of like the power of storytelling. And I'm so grateful to be able to give this. It's almost like a gift for Gabriel and Jamie to have while she's, now on the outside.
Wow, that's quite a story about the first meeting. I'm sorry it worked out that way, but I'm glad, like you said, you were able to be there and offer support. What advice would you give to aspiring filmmakers in general, especially documentary filmmakers?
Well, I think, is to follow your gut. If you see a good story and you don't always think you might get it. I mean, as I said, I have like a stack of ideas that I would love to do. And I think if you're in a position to do the work without getting paid, it can pay you back. I have a friend who's a director, and he does a lot of commercial work and can make money and survive off of that. And this isn't the case for everyone, but he always tries to devote 30% of his projects to something that he is not tied to money, and where he can just be very creative. And oftentimes it's his clients will see that work that he made and be like, oh, that's what I want you to do for us. And in a lot of ways, I feel like this project was fell into that 30%. I knew we weren't going to get paid a lot. Shorts are very difficult to, make money off of. So I knew it wasn't going to be because, we were going to make money from doing this project. But the reward from making it just creatively is just, and it's just been so fulfilling and has fed all the other aspects of my life in many different ways. So I think I would say to aspiring filmmakers, if you can, maybe it's just like a 5-minute project that you do on the weekends. If you have to work a lot, just trying to do these creative work that's not tied to money all the time can be just very fulfilling and feed your other work in ways that might be unexpected. So that's one kind of piece of advice I would give. And also, every no, even though you're getting a lot of rejections with grants or whatever it is, I mean, those are relationships. Those are people that you've talked to. They've seen your work. They now know your name. And I've seen over the years now that those same people come back and it ends up being a yes, and a lot of it is about timing, and not necessarily about, your work, the quality of your work. So that's some advice I would give.
Yeah, that's great advice. Is there anything new that you're working on that you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I was mentioned before, but I am in the middle of finishing my second feature-length film, which is called The Gas Station Attendant. And it grew out of phone calls that I recorded with my dad while he was working nights at a gas station. I feel like I really love working with audio and phone calls because there's just this intimacy in those recordings that you don't get when you have a camera. So I feel very fortunate to have these phone calls. But this is more of a personal essay film that kind of explores the American dream, I guess, for new immigrants and for me as a second generation. It's kind of interweaving both of our stories and kind of telling the story of my dad's life through these calls, and using a lot of home movies and some, home movies past and even today and present of my own children too. And so that film is for public television. We are hopefully going to be in festivals next year, and then it will air on public television.
Well, I can't wait to see it. For anyone who would like to follow your career and track the Love Jamie film or any of your other work, can you please share your website and any relevant social media handles?
Sure. My Instagram is at Karla Making Stuff, and Karla is with a K. And the film Instagram is at Love Jamie Film. I think on Instagram you can then find our websites, but my website is my name, karlamurthy.net, and my production company is called Green Fort Productions with an E, Greene. Excuse me. Those are how you can find us. And our film, Love Jamie, is streaming on American Masters for free. And it's on YouTube or on the PBS page. And I feel so fortunate that we were able to give Jamie that platform for her artwork, and for American Masters was such a dream. So I'm really happy that's where we ended up.
Yeah, it's a great place to be, and all the art lovers out there can see Jamie's wonderful. Is there anything else you would like to share that I haven't already asked you?
Let me think. Sorry, it's a little dry where I am. I think I was trying to think about one of the things that I kept thinking about was in making the film. Excuse me, let me just drink some water and have a little frog in my throat. I love that Jamie and Gabriel met through letters. And I feel like the art of letter writing is lost, and that was one of the surprising things, actually, when you were asking me about, some of the surprising things I learned is how much I kind of miss that form of communication. Because we meet people and we text with them, and it's just such a beautiful thing to have this. They have hundreds of letters that they've shared with each other, and it's such a beautiful archive. And I really kind of miss that art of letter writing, and I wish it would come back.
Well, I agree. Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say letters are great, and from what I understand, the younger generation, a lot of them aren't learning to write cursive anymore, so I don't think they'll be able to read the old letters and archives anymore.
It's so sad. I mean, when I was growing up, we would read. I went to a performing and visual art high school, and we were required to read, the letters of Chopin and all these people, and it was just such an amazing archive to have. An amazing way to get to know someone too, and not through these little short bits of information. I think we should bring back letter writing and make everyone learn how to write cursive again.
Wow. Terrific. Okay. Well, on that note, before we wrap up, I just want to give a shout out to Jamie and Gabriel for sharing their story, and just let Jamie know how much I, love seeing the artwork. It's amazing. And thank you so much, Karla, for joining us. We really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with our listeners.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Sorry about my voice.
No problem. And thanks, everyone, for listening.
Now, in its second edition, Carol Dean's popular book, The Art of Film Funding, has 12 new chapters to cover all areas of film financing and how to avoid expensive pitfalls. Learn how to start with an idea and end with a trailer, how to make an ask for money, create your story structure and your trailer, legal advice, fair use, successful crowdfunding, how to ask for music rights, and what insurance you can't shoot without. Available on Amazon under Carol Dean and at FromTheHeartProductions.com. I want to remind our listeners that David Raiklin is a brilliant and talented award-winning musician who scores films and can compose music for a trio or for a full orchestra. David is a very good friend to the independent filmmaker and comes highly recommended by From the Heart Productions. If you need music to help tell your story, please contact him at davidraiklin.com. That's David, RAIKLEN.com. And Carol and I want to thank you for tuning in to The Art of Film Funding. Please visit our website at FromTheHeartProductions.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Good luck with your films, everyone.
When it's PCS time, you know the drill. Pack, research a new base, get the kids in school, because family supports family. At American Public University, we support military families with flexible, affordable online education that moves with you. As a military spouse, your tuition rate is the same as your partner's, just $250 per credit hour. American Public University, education that moves with you. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.